One thing that I forgot to mention at the end of my last video was that after training with King Cold, Frieza was able to unlock his suppressed form, which is the one that we see him in the majority of the Namek saga. And it's interesting because the way they explain it, it's like the suppressed form helps them build up their power. If they have a lot of power on the onset, it's a form of training essentially. It's able to train them and build that power up because not everybody has it. Right now only Frieza and King Cold seem to have it, and the rest of the race basically is in their final form. But again, I think that suppressed form has something to do with their evolution and building up their power. And we're going to see another example of it being used next in Dragon Ball Unguarded.
Know your place, worm. Prepare yourself. Damn Saiyan.
These chapters start with the courtship between King Cold and his wife, and it is a pretty sweet courtship. Honestly, it's a arranged marriage sort of thing where she really doesn't have a say in it, and she seems to be extremely too young to have any realization of what's going on. And King Cold's actually very sweet to her and takes a liking to her right away. And as I was saying earlier, with the various forms that Frieza and King Cold can go into, at one point he suppresses himself and goes into his first form just to show her and put her a little bit more at ease, so that way they can kind of bond a little bit. And I thought that was a nice little touch, and for me it makes it seem that the way King Cold always is with his huge form, that's his second form that he's always in. So he does have the various other forms he can go into. And the whole purpose of this scene is to set up what's going on here. The queen of the King Cold Empire is taking Frieza and trying to leave with him. This is built upon from the last chapter, and I'm going to have a link to my last video where I cover the first 2 chapters of this Dragon Ball fan manga. It's going to be in the description below. But she ends up entrusting her escape to the Saiyan that we saw in the last chapter. Unfortunately for her, this seems to be a trap. And sadly, it seems to have been set up by not only King Cold himself, but also Cooler, as Cooler is watching on from the balcony, seeing his mother escape with Frieza. And he's the one that was really training or trying to figure out what the power was of this Saiyan. So I'm pretty sure he had some input in this sabotage of his mother's plan to escape. The Saiyan ends up going into his Uzaru state and attacking the queen, ending up injuring her. And before he can kill her, Frieza ends up waking up and he ends up blasting his hand to oblivion, while also cutting off his tail, bringing him back to his normal form. But before Frieza can finish him off, he passes out as well. Now, Frieza has no idea what was going on. He had no idea he was about to be kidnapped, and he had no idea that his mother was going to betray the family and King Cold. All he knew was that a Saiyan attacked his mother and ended up injuring her enough where she basically at this point now is bedridden and can only walk around with a cane. Like I said, this is real dark stuff. Honestly, I thought that King Cold was going to have her killed, but somehow this is a little bit more disturbing, I think. Especially that Cooler was also involved. Cooler then ends up using the Saiyans to attack a planet where the Tuffles are on. In this universe, the Tuffles are on a separate planet, and he sends the Saiyans there to conquer them and test them out and see exactly what they can do. Now, he realizes that the Saiyans are extremely powerful in their own right, but without the Uzaru transformation, they are extremely vulnerable. And since they're basically just savages, they don't have the equipment necessary to take down the planet and conquer it outright. So what they end up doing is enrolling into the elite forces of Cooler's army, so he can get training, they can get armor, they can get equipment, and that way they're better equipped to take down planets. So a large contingent of Saiyans comes to the palace, and Cooler ends up hosting a dinner for them to bring them into the fold. Now, Frieza, being who he is at this point in the story, he dislikes Cooler, he hates the monkeys, so he ends up disrespecting Cooler in the middle of his dinner, and then when he walks by, he pulls a random Saiyan's tail, causing them to break their plate. His mother ends up hearing about this, and then she tells him that he needs to go apologize to Cooler, and he also needs to go apologize to the Saiyan child. So he ends up going to apologize to Cooler in a scene that really pushes the limit of how much sexuality I'm willing to take in a Frieza origin story. And then he goes and apologizes, or tries to apologize, to the Saiyan kid, but he finds that Vegeta, King Vegeta as a child, plus a lot of his friends are picking on this kid. So he ends up blowing them away with a gesture of his hand. They go flying into the wall, and as the Saiyan kid is trying to thank him, he flies off. Now this kid seems to be on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the rest of the Saiyans. She basically has to fight for her own food, and so she ends up going around hunting for food. Frieza ends up picking on her, almost feeding her to an alligator, and at this point she ends up scampering off into the jungle. Frieza returns to his mother and tells her that, yeah, he apologized to Cooler, and then he lies about apologizing to the Saiyan kid, but she's not gonna know that, and she tells him that maybe he should befriend the Saiyan child because she's in a brand new place, it's exotic, and she's probably lonely, and she's probably really happy that she found Frieza. And this is probably coming from the mother's experience from being in a brand new place, because King Cold actually rescued her from an abusive family and brought her to his own planet, which is a brand new place for her, which is covered in an earlier chapter. And so Frieza takes this all to heart, goes back to the Saiyans, to Vegeta, takes their food because Vegeta's kind of a dick in this, and then brings it into the jungle and tries to find the Saiyan. Now, Ginyu earlier in the chapter had been given a scouter, and it was something that was salvaged from the Tuffles, and it's something that they used in their abilities to be able to search for different life and different power levels, and so they brought it into the Cooler army, and now Ginyu has a prototype one. So Frieza ends up taking that, and that's how he ends up searching for the Saiyan child, and ends up finding her in a tree. And that's where this chapter ends off, where Frieza's like, I got all day and I'm gonna wait by the tree, and presumably this might be the start of a friendship between these two. It's gonna be hard for me to see this, Frieza being friends with the Saiyan, but that is gonna be covered in the next chapter, which is gonna be my last video on this, because I don't think there are more chapters to this, but if there are, I'll cover them when they do come out. But let me know what you guys think of this chapter in the comment section below. Let me know. Again, I will have the next part, or the last part I guess, of this chapter in my next video, and I have a link in the description below to me covering the first two chapters in a separate video, so go ahead and check that out if you want. This is going to be BlackScape signing off.